All right. Number 5. Thank you for allowing me to take a 5-minute bathroom break. So I just finished recording the 4th one. I wanted to make sure that I get the bathroom break in there. And I had to wash off the face paint because, you know, in Minnesota, it's bad luck to wear face paint in the bathroom. You don't want to make Paul Bunyan upset. So, you know what? There's certain legends that you people know about when you're a kid. And the face paint Paul Bunyan is something you don't mess with in Minnesota. So I decided to wash it off and then reapply it, you know, when I start the video. So thank you for understanding that. That's an important thing for Minnesotans. So in this video, we're going to talk about Chipper Jones. You know, if you watched that first video, you noticed that was a favorite player of mine. And mostly because it was the first card I remember. So specifically, it was a 1991 Topps Chipper Jones. So with this card, since I had that connection with that, I decided to, back when the pandemic hit, I decided to do some research. And I decided to give PSA grading a chance. You know, I never gave love. I never, gave them respect as a company, as an investment opportunity. You know, unless you had like graded cards, it's important to get those like slabbed up. You know, I always thought that, but for the modern things, and then there's a new term called ultra modern, that's a thing I didn't know about until doing research. And with that, you know, I wanted to pick something that was safe. And, you know, with me, you're going to find a lot of safe investments. I don't like to take big chances like on Jaw. Like, that's just not me. And Kobe White, I mean, I don't think he's that good. But, you know, his hair, and that's an important thing. You know, when I first saw pictures of him, I just assumed he was a center. I did. I saw that big hair, and I just assumed he was 7 feet tall. But then when I did fantasy basketball, I noticed that he was a PG, and that was a point guard. And I'm like, that didn't really fit with my ideas in my head. I thought he was a center, but he was a point guard. But he's a big point guard. Okay, so with Topps, with Chipper Jones, you know, that was one that I knew was safe. Not like Jaw. I mean, he's good, but he could have an ice fishing accident. Or when he's snow plowing his driveway, you know, you've seen Fargo. It could get bad. So I'm always thinking in the back of my head, you know, it's safer to invest in people that retire and they don't have like a snowmobile accident. Because I think as an investor, there's always that thing. When I'm watching games, I'm thinking, gosh, when they go home, if there's a snowstorm, they might get hurt in a snowblower accident. And I don't want that to happen. So that's kind of a worry that we have in Minnesota. So I don't know. That's just what when I invest in, I think about the snowmobile thing. So when I think about the Chipper Jones, you know, I knew all of his sets. I mean, I knew there was Bowman. I knew that he wasn't in Donruss. He wasn't in Score. Oh, it wasn't in Fleer, sorry. Fleer and Donruss. They didn't say it was okay. And I kind of wish he had a yellow 1991 Fleer. I really do. And I think it's the ugliest set, but I think Chipper might have brightened that up. It would have added a little bit of sunlight to that set, and I feel like that could have brought it to the second worst set ever. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But if you look at Bowman, for example. So here are Chipper Jones Bowmans. And what I've noticed is that the Bowman is actually lower than the Topps right now. And I was kind of surprised by that. You know, when I was a little boy, this card was about $5. And this was a card that I never thought I would have. You know, you'd have the Chipper Jones was about $3 or $4 when I was a kid. But this one I didn't see as much. Which made me think, man, you can't find it unless you go to Iowa. So I just didn't see it around. So I always thought it was super rare, and maybe it wasn't actually a real card. So when I did more research as an adult, I realized that, yeah, they did exist. They did. And so I knew that the price of the Topps should be less than the Bowman. So that's one thing for you new collectors out there. If you're just getting into the hobby and you listen to Snoop Dogg, make sure you know that Bowman is better than Topps. At least it should be more than that because they're not as many, okay? And this is a cool card. I mean, look at that swing. He's like a golfer swing. I like that. I coach baseball, and I didn't really say swing like a golf club, but I don't think it would have mattered because I didn't know what I was talking about. I did it for free. Okay, so back to cards. So if you look at Bowman, you know, when I decided to really go all in April after doing research, I decided to make a little note on a piece of paper, and I wrote down all the cards for Chipper Jones, the Bowman, the score, here's the score, okay, and then the tops, and then the upper deck, and then these last two, I kind of got into that collector mode. I didn't think these would go up much, but you know, it's one of those things where you kind of get into that mode and you're like, wow, I just might as well complete the set. So, you know, I did get two of the classic ones, you know, and I don't think the investment point, I don't think they're going to go up much. I think there's money in the tops and Bowman, but not as much as the upper deck and score. I see that the tops and the Bowman are the highest because they're a tops company. So when I think about those cards, I made a little list. You know, I like doing little diagrams, so I need a nice little chart. So I took each card and I thought about what should I pay for a raw card. And so for Bowman, I was thinking when I was buying lots on eBay, if they were $2, if they were $2 bill each, that's good, I'll buy them. And when I think about tops, if they were $1 each, I would buy them. Okay, and then back in April, they were cheap. You could get 50 tops cards for pretty cheap. And then when I think about score, I was thinking about 75 cents. That was kind of my number in my head. And I talk about a number in my head and I kind of stick with it. And then finally, I have some upper deck here. So my biggest thing is I pick a number in my head after doing some research and I think about once I have that number, I stick with it. I trust myself. So then I just go crazy and I buy. And I've talked about that. So like with upper deck, when I think about the PSA, so I talked about the raw card, and that means that it's ungraded. So when I think about the graded cards, I knew the price point would be higher because they're graded and they're slabbed up in this case. So, you know, I decided I got some price points. I did Bowman. If they were $55, buy. You know what? And that worked for a while. I was able to get 4, and then the price went to 56, and I went, no. I set a price, and I stuck with it. So $55, I bought until that mark was done. I did the same thing with upper deck. You know, I said these were 30, and then once it hit 30, I went, nope, all done. And then I looked at tops, and my number was $45. Once the tops card got about $45, once it hit 47, I was like, oh my gosh, that's too much money, and I just backed off. And then these, my price point was about $18. I knew they're not the expensive ones, okay? So that's kind of my strategy for buying Chipper Jones. I hope that helps. I think when you pick a player and you kind of want to go all in on that player, whether it's Yordan Alvarez or Walker Buehler or Rafael Devers or Miguel Sano. No, don't go Miguel Sano. He's a bad investment. He makes some poor choices in the offseason, so don't go Miguel Cabrera or Miguel Sano. I think Byron Buxton, you know, that card that I talked about in a previous episode, the Byron Buxton and the Torrey Hunter autograph booklet, that was pretty cool. So I think Byron Buxton, you know, he gets a lot of the WAR stats in his fielding. So that's his thing. So if we think about Andrew Wiggins, I said that was a bad investment. He was pretty good on offense. You know, he would get about 22 points a game for Minnesota Timberwolves, but his defense was bad. He kind of just sat back and let anybody kind of run past him. So he was good in offense, well, okay in offense, but then he was so bad in defense that he was a bad player. And if I look at Byron Buxton, he's an average hitter, below average, but then his fielding is magnificent. So when I think about Byron Buxton, I think he's a good buy because his WAR, and I use that a lot in baseball. I use the WAR, and that's a stat that they take into consideration the wins against replacements. So, and that was a new stat about I don't know, 8 years ago. That's when I first saw it, and I love numbers, and I'm just obsessed with numbers. So when I saw the war, I knew that that was a good indicator of who's good and who should I invest in. And I think with Bo Bichette, I've talked about him. He's got a good amount of war, wins above replacement, and he's only 22. So, I think that's a good indicator of future success. And I started talking about the war when I talked about Byron Buxton, because he gets some war, wins above replacement for his fielding. Okay. All right. That was it. I just want to talk a little bit about the Chipper Jones and the PSA and all my mindset with that. Oh, got a little makeup here. Okay. So, you know what? I think we're going to end it there. Yeah, I think so. Do you guys have any more questions? No? Okay. All right. Thanks for coming. I always appreciate that. I really do. I do. And whenever I see that thumbs up icon, and when I look at the video, so my kids taught me how to look back on the videos, and they taught me how to post the videos. So, when they show me how I'm doing, I'm like, wow, 100 views on my first video. You know what? And I think my kids will think I'm really cool. So that's kind of what I'm going for. It wasn't the early goal, but you know what? Now I'm seeing their eyes light up and like, oh, daddy's a YouTube star. You know what? And it made me feel good about myself. So yeah, hit that like and subscribe and tell your friends. All right. Have a good night, guys.